Roblox is a very innocent game. With a rating of E10+, how could you not expect the game to be innocent? Yes, I know the game's content creators have been involved in controversies, and the company behind Roblox has too, but the game itself has stayed relevant, which is actually pretty nice to me. But we aren't here to go over the game itself, we're here to talk about the game's many amounts of horror games. When discussing Roblox horror games, there's one game that gets brought up in particular, this game being The Mimic by Muddage. It's clear to see why this game is a poster child for Roblox horror games, because before Roblox horror games were just games with no real objective other than how long can you survive, which is fine and all, but after the third Survive the Killers game in Area 51, it can get pretty boring. So when making The Mimic, Muddage clearly had a goal of having a story for the players to follow. While yes, the story is confusing at times, it does keep the players interested, with little text showing up throughout the game conveying dialogue. However, this is not the best Roblox horror game in my opinion. Instead, I like to bring your attention to a Roblox horror game by the name Judy. Now when going into Judy, I was expecting something worse than The Mimic. Because well, after playing the Black Death, I realized something. Most Roblox horror games don't put much work into their models. And what I mean by this is most Roblox horror game antagonists are just Roblox characters with a texture over them. Which is fine and all, until you see how they operate in game.
Oh my god.
Fronts! I'm gonna go check the jump scare.
Oh my god.
That actually kind of scared me even though I was expecting it. Alright.
Yeah, it's not all that scary. But when I played Judy, and I seen the opening cutscene, I was genuinely shocked. Because well, this bobbling head does not look like a typical Roblox character. This model actually looks kinda menacing. And well, when I played the game, I was greeted with this thing. This little metallic spider crawling towards me. But before we go any further, let's discuss this game's story so far from what I've seen. The game starts off with a big Hollywood sign. This is our first sign for the game's story for chapter 1. It then cuts to a car with a bobblehead on it, with the car reading Judy. We are then thrown into the game where we find out that we are in an amusement park attraction called Judy's Tunnel of Fame. We then boot up the ride and go through the attraction with stuff falling and robots glitching out. At the end, our ride begins to sink. We are then forced to swim across to get to an underground tunnel. Here we find newspaper articles reading off how ex-Hollywood star Judy ended her career and eventually went missing. I will now give these events in chronological order. Judy is growing old, and with old age, her body begins to look less appealing. After this, Judy begins to get plastic surgery to look young again. But this does not go well, with her turning out to look more hideous than before. She is then replaced by a new star by the name Linda. After this, Judy goes crazy and attacks her cameraman, with 3 being injured and 2 dying. After this, Judy goes missing, leading into the events of the game. It is worth noting that this chapter takes place in the future, in which Judy has been missing since the 70s, and our protagonist is now investigating her disappearance by going to the old theme park. And as of right now, that is all I've played. I'm genuinely invested in this game's story now. I want to find out what happened to Judy. I want to uncover Hollywood's mysteries, and most importantly, I want to keep playing. And with that being said, I've been Just Quilted, and until next week, later.